story of Hitler's inner circle begins in the final days of World War I. Germany is on the verge of surrender.
It looks like the British and the Americans and the French are going to beat Germany without even setting a foot on German soil.
It was a total chaos in the country when the German army was coming back. Millions of people, they were unemployed. It was an unrest politically, but also economically.
Poverty and starvation are everywhere. Law and order has broken down, and a socialist revolution is sweeping the country. The German intelligentsia are deeply divided between extreme left and far right-wing politics. And in southern Germany, the Bavarian capital of Munich is a hotbed of these extremist views. Among the city's outspoken right-wing elite is a 50-year-old Bavarian poet and dramatist called Dietrich Eckart.
Dietrich Eckart is not a figure that many people would associate with the Nazi movement today, but he is in fact one of the most important figures within it, and it's him who arguably sets in motion the whole political force.
Eckart is well known to be a heavy drinker, but having made his name and fortune as a playwright before the war, he's also wealthy and well-connected.
He's a cultured individual, he's a well-known poet. He's able to articulate his views reasonably well.
But those views are of the extreme far right. And in keeping with the times, his paper, Auf gut Deutsch, or In Good German, is a rabidly racist Jew-baiting sheet. Eckart also has connections with a secretive right-wing occultist group known as the Thule Society. But there's a dark side to the Thule Society myth. They believe the superhuman Aryans had been weakened by interbreeding with inferior and morally corrupt races. Now these inferior races are in control, and the chaos Eckart sees in Germany is the result.
It's the scapegoat notion. What he's discovered, he claims, is that there is a worldwide conspiracy.
Eckart fervently believes that the enemies of Aryan Germany are the Bolsheviks, the communists, and most of all, the Jews.
The Jewish race is concerned to destroy all other cultures from within, by infiltration, corrupting the body from within, the bacillus within.
There was not one shred of evidence for any of this, but it became a cornerstone for one of the most powerful movements in history.
Eckart wants to hit back at these enemies within. But to succeed, he must get his message beyond the elite and out to the masses. He needs to reach the disaffected working classes. In the summer of 1919, the victorious Allies gather in Paris. And on the 28th of June, they and Germany sign a momentous document, the Versailles Treaty. There is widespread rejoicing across Europe. But for Germany, the treaty is disastrous. It demands compensation and revenge for World War I.
No one really anticipates quite how much the German people are going to suffer because of the strictures of the Versailles Treaty.
Germany is fined more than 260 billion gold marks, the equivalent of $860 billion in today's money. A fifth of their industry is taken over by the Allies, and they are stripped of all overseas colonies. While in Europe, they're forced to give up a massive 13% of German territory and hand it to neighboring countries. Almost 7 million Germans lose their citizenship and are forced to become part of nations like Poland and Czechoslovakia. In August 1919, a new democratic government, the Weimar Republic, takes shape, designed to replace the autocratic rule of the Kaiser and his generals. But to Eckart, it's weak and dominated by Jewish and liberal politicians. He's determined his party should take them on. But to do that, he needs a man who can speak directly to the people, an inspirational leader. In the autumn of 1919, at a German Workers' Party meeting, a spy lurks in the crowd. He's been sent by the German army to report on proceedings. But the young man finds the anti-communist and anti-Semitic opinions chiming strongly with his own.
He finds that rather than spying on them, that actually they're speaking a language that he understands.
Inspired, he stops taking notes and starts addressing the crowd.
He realizes immediately that his voice is compelling. The hall falls silent.
He stands up and speaks, and everyone's incredibly impressed by this man who's speaking with such passion and venom as well.
His name is Adolf Hitler. Eckart is transfixed.
He actually jumps onto tables and gives these fantastically fiery pieces of oratory. And very, very quickly, Eckart realizes that this is the man. He is the man who is going to lead them forward.
Eckart isn't the only person captivated by Hitler. In the crowd is a young university student, Rudolf Hess.
Rudolf Hess is a man who's very young, very impressionable. But Hitler, when he sees him, he sort of hangs on his every word.
From a wealthy family, Hess had been a brave and disciplined soldier during the war. He too had found refuge in the mythical politics of the Tula Society. And the moment he hears Hitler speak, he falls under his spell.
He goes back home to his girlfriend and says, I've seen this man.
His adulation of Hitler, he pours out to her in this long description of the skills and ability and charisma and messianic quality of the man he's mad.
This is the beginning of what almost becomes a love affair.
The besotted Hess will become one of Hitler's first disciples and a founding member of the inner circle. He will soon be joined by others. Among them is a troublesome 19-year-old schoolteacher's son. His name is Heinrich Himmler. Himmler had turned 18 in the final days of World War I and had been desperate to prove himself as a soldier, but it was too late.
One of the greatest frustrations for Heinrich Himmler is that he was just a little bit too young to have served in the war. And this is an immense frustration to him. So he has all this sort of kind of thwarted military ambition.
Himmler, an avid diary writer and stamp collector, had been a sickly child.
Himmler is a fairly awkward young man. He is not particularly social. He's, I think one could say, sexually somewhat repressed.
He had a deep inferiority complex, which he overcomes by being very aggressive and being very destructive, literally, in his approach to people.
One of the ideas that Himmler is obsessed with is this whole notion of Blut und Boden, blood and soil. German society will get back to its folkish, its sort of folkish roots, and it'll become a much more kind of agricultural economy. And it will also become a very pure, biological, Aryan race of people. And in doing so, Germany will find enormous strength and will be able to create an empire. For a young man like Himmler, these kind of quasi-mythological, racial, biological ideas will hold immense appeal, and he'll never lose his absolute adoration for it.
And soon, this wannabe soldier will meet the man to bring his dreams to fruition and give Himmler the chance to fight for his crazy ideals. For now, though, that man is far from the finished article. Although Eckart believes Hitler is the prophesied redeemer, he recognizes that this young firebrand is a rough stone that needs careful polishing. With Hitler now installed as the party's head of propaganda, the two men get to work refining the theories and beliefs of the movement. Together, they are a formidable team.
Hitler and Eckart complemented each other perfectly. Although Eckart was in no way a decent public speaker, he was a very good writer, a very good theoretician, and Hitler, meanwhile, his thoughts were very rambling and he couldn't really write very well. So actually, what Eckart could do was to take Hitler's words, polish them, order them, serve them back to him, and then Hitler could then speak them and deliver them in this fantastically powerful oratorical fashion that would woo audiences. It worked brilliantly.
The Nazis pledged to take back the lands stolen by the Treaty of Versailles and put an end to the crippling payments demanded by the Allies.
The genius of this is that they're very simple, they're very easy to remember, and therefore they draw a lot of political water.
Eckart gives them their rallying cry, Deutschland erwache, Germany awake. And the party also gets a new emblem believed by Tula Society mystics to be of ancient Aryan origin, the swastika. And the movement is rebranded as the National Socialist Workers' Party. The Nazi Party is born. The movement is slowly gaining momentum, and powerful men are beginning to take notice. Men like Captain Ernst Röhm. For the Nazis, Röhm, still a serving officer in the German army, could be a key asset. He has access to both men and weapons. Röhm is inevitably drawn to the Nazi message and to their charismatic new spokesman. But his relationship with Hitler is no love affair. To him, Hitler is a means to his own ends.
Remember, he's an officer, he's a captain, so he sees himself as above Hitler, and Hitler should be doing his bidding.
In its early days, the Nazi Party didn't regard Hitler so much as its leader, but as its drummer. He was a man who could rustle up support. And so for someone like Röhm, who was a very powerful figure in his own right, this suited him perfectly.
So Röhm joins the movement, supporting Hitler financially and introducing him to senior patriotic military officers. The party is growing, but if they are to make a real difference, they must do more than rabble-rouse in beer cellars. In December 1920, Eckart and Röhm see a chance to get the Nazi message out onto the streets. They raise funds to buy the Tula Society's failing weekly newspaper. It's an early foray into mass propaganda, a tool the Nazis will learn to use with breathtaking efficiency. At this point, Hitler is still officially just the party's mouthpiece, but Eckart, installed as the paper's editor-in-chief, wastes no time in selling his vision of Hitler as Germany's Messiah.
Hitler doesn't think of himself as the Messiah. He thinks he's probably John the Baptist, and that at some point the Messiah will appear.
But Eckart refers to Hitler as der kommenden Großen, the coming Great One, ascribing to him the mystical powers of an Aryan mythical Teutonic chieftain. It captures the imagination of his readers, but also feeds Hitler's ego.
He begins to realize, encouraged by men like Eckart, that he might be the person who will save Germany.
And Eckart isn't the only Nazi to see Hitler in this way. The now devoted Rudolf Hess throws himself into doing Hitler's bidding. Shortly after Eckart's article, Hess begins addressing Hitler as the leader, der Führer. Hess's Führer is about to be transformed. In July 1921, the Nazi Party is thrown into crisis. Eckart discovers that the party's official leader, Anton Drexler, is attempting to merge with other political groups. Hitler is furious. Why should their manifesto be polluted by other parties? He immediately resigns. But secretly, Hitler has no intention of turning his back on the Nazis.
This is a really, really smart move from Hitler. He's basically resigning in order to get back into power. How? Because he says, well, you can either back me or you can make do without me. He knows fully well, like any good negotiator, that he has got the ace up his sleeve. They're going to back him and he knows it.
It is through Dietrich Eckart that Hitler demands to become chairman with dictatorial powers.
Eckart takes Hitler's ultimatum to the party and calls a vote. With an overwhelming majority, 543 to 1, they ditch Drexler and make Hitler their official leader. Eckart has handed Hitler complete control of the Nazi Party, but he will soon live to regret it. The Nazis are still only a small fringe organization. If they are to fulfill their plan to seize power by force, they need more than words. They need an army. Ernst Röhm starts creating the party's own paramilitary force, the so-called sports section. By the autumn of 1921, it has 300 men and a new name, the Storm Section, or Sturmabteilung. Röhm's SA ejects hecklers from meetings and intimidates political opponents. But they're ill-disciplined. They need a leader, and as an army officer, Röhm can't be seen to do it. As if on cue, the perfect man for the job returns to Munich. Renowned war hero Hermann Göring is back, and the ambitious former fighter ace heads straight for the cause that could hand him the power and influence he craves.
Göring thinks, actually, this is something I should join. It's a small movement, and I can be a big man in it.
Göring doesn't buy into all Hitler's extremist policies, but he's willing to set aside any moral objections for his own personal power and recognition.
He saw in Nazism a means of achieving personal advancement. He was looking after his own interests. He wanted Germany to be in his image.
A day after first seeing Hitler talk, the two men meet, and Göring fully understands his worth to Hitler and the Nazi Party.
He is a celebrity. He's well known. People venerate towards Göring. He's good to have on your team.
Along with the other members of the growing inner circle, they will begin to bring the fledgling Nazi Party out of the shadows. With Hess recruiting ever more members and Röhm securing secret army training, Göring sets about turning the Sturmabteilung into a formidable force. For now, Röhm continues to recruit willing fighters to his militia, and one particularly enthusiastic young idealist catches his eye, the wannabe soldier, Heinrich Himmler.
The opportunity that the connection with Röhm gives him is the uniform. The idea, I can be a soldier, a toy one perhaps in some respects, but I can be seen as a soldier. That's the attraction.
Röhm introduces Himmler to the growing Nazi Party, and in August 1923, he becomes party member 14,303. At first, he remains under Röhm's wing. There are few indications that he will become the most murderous and feared anti-Semite of them all. The key players are now in place. All they need is an opportunity to make their mark. Events conspire to help them when Germany plunges into economic chaos as hyperinflation grips the economy. The Weimar government has no choice but to default on Germany's repayments to the Allies. In retaliation, French and Belgian troops seize one of Germany's few assets, the Ruhr, the country's industrial heartland. For the first time, foreign troops are on German sovereign territory. For Göring and the Nazis, this is a call to arms.
So now you've got the perfect conditions, the complete collapse of the economy and the ruin of all the middle classes. And so really they feel this is the point. 1923 is the point when we go. Let's go for the coup.
Göring knows the clock is ticking, and he wants to act now. The economic crisis is hitting party coffers hard, and his SA militia are becoming restless. For Röhm, it's decision time. He chooses to resign from the army and gamble everything on a successful Nazi coup. Röhm then eggs Hitler on, insisting that much of the army supports them and won't stand in their way. It's agreed. Now is the time to seize power. But how? The plan is to take Bavaria first, before marching on the national government in Berlin.
The aim of the putsch, quite simply, is to challenge the Bavarian government in Munich with the aim of challenging the government in Germany overall. It's that simple.
When the Nazis hear that Prime Minister von Kahr is holding a public meeting in the Bürgerbraukeller, one of Munich's main beer halls, and that the chiefs of the Bavarian army and police will also be there, they know they have to move fast.
When they learn of this, the Nazis fear that von Kahr is going to steal a march on them. They are immensely suspicious that von Kahr is going to declare Bavarian independence from Germany, and the Nazis do not want this at all. They think, right, we must act quickly, we've got to do it now.
Goering arrives at the Bürgerbraukeller with 100 of his heavily armed elite SA shock troops. In all, 600 SAs surround the hall.
Goering's troops are an immensely disciplined, well-dressed looking bunch. And so when they get off their trucks outside the Bürgerbraukeller, the local police force just assume they're actual regular army units and just let them get on with it. It's actually a marvellous bit of deception.
Inside, Gustav von Kahr is addressing the crowd, and as predicted, the chiefs of the Bavarian police and army are with him.
Goering and his men smash through the doors into the Bürgerbraukeller, and they set up a Maxim machine gun at one end of the hall, which gives them absolute ability to wipe out everybody in that room. Then they barge their way through the middle of the hall, making way for Adolf Hitler.
Hitler marches in with the SA. They take over. He fires a shot into the ceiling. All the plaster and the wood came down.
Hitler declares, "The National Socialist Revolution has broken out."
They bundle the triumvirate into this side room and they begin their negotiations.
Hitler tries to convince the three state leaders to join the coup, but they refuse. Back in the main hall, Hess targets senior political opponents for kidnap to remove them from the city, while Goering keeps the crowd in check. With the beer hall locked down, Röhm gets the call to action. He orders his men to march on the Bavarian War Ministry. Himmler proudly carries the old imperial banner. All over the city, SA units close in on their targets. But back at the beer hall, Goering struggles to maintain calm, and Hitler's negotiations are in stalemate. In a desperate attempt to turn things round, he makes an impassioned speech to the crowd, lying that the government have agreed to back them. Amazingly, the crowd believes him, and then, as if perfectly choreographed, Ludendorff arrives. Ludendorff works his magic, and the leaders of Bavaria agree to join them. The Nazi coup is suddenly ignited. Out on the streets, Röhm and Himmler's unit have seized control of the War Ministry. And some army and police units around Munich even agree to join the uprising. It begins to look like the coup is going to succeed. Hitler then decides to leave Goering and Ludendorff in charge to check on Röhm's progress.
Hitler leaves the Bürgerbraukeller and goes off to the barricades where he finds Röhm. And he embraces Röhm and says to him, we're on, the new Reich government is being formed.
Back at the Bürgerbraukeller, the atmosphere is now more relaxed. But with Goering distracted fetching drinks for his men, Ludendorff makes a grave error.
It appears that Kahr persuaded Ludendorff to let him go. And Ludendorff said, okay, give your word that you won't back out.
Von Kahr assures Ludendorff he won't betray them. He walks past Goering's drunken troops and leaves. Von Kahr quickly rallies the army. In an instant, the tables are turned on the Nazis. The coup has stalled, and as the sun rises the next day, Goering and the rest of the inner circle are unsure what to do. In an attempt to keep the coup alive, Ludendorff now takes the initiative.
It's Ludendorff who seizes the moment and says, "We will march!"
The Nazis set off for the center of Munich in a last desperate roll of the dice.
Goering, Hitler, Ludendorff, yes, they're all in line. And they link arms.
But the authorities are waiting for them. In the mayhem, 16 Nazis are killed and many more injured. And Hitler only just cheats death.
A bullet narrowly misses Hitler by a foot. If it had gone a foot to the right, history would have been very different.
The coup has ended in complete disaster. Badly injured, Goering escapes to Austria. Exiled from his country, a wanted man, his dreams of glory shattered. Rudolf Hess also flees to Austria, while Himmler returns to his mother's house, not yet a big enough player to attract the attention of the authorities. Röhm turns himself in and is jailed along with Hitler. The putsch was a total failure. The inner circle is broken, their party disbanded, and their Führer behind bars.
Nobody would have thought these people come into power again to push the world into that bloody total war.
But together, they have learned a valuable lesson.
This kind of revolutionary politics didn't work. But in the end, you would have to subvert democracy by becoming democratic.
In the years to come, the failed putsch will be rewritten into Nazi folklore as a triumphant struggle.
It's glorified. And any members of Hitler's inner circle who were there on that very fateful day have their place in the inner circle cemented.
The putsch creates this bond of blood between future senior figures of the Third Reich.